Hey, you guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. First of all, apologies for not getting a recording out to you guys for the last full moon we had in the sign of Capricorn. That was on June 21st. I was out on a cruise with my family, we left from San Francisco and went all the way up to Alaska, and it was a very wild experience. I will say this. I certainly would not have chose this for my top choice for a vacation, but it was somewhat of a family reunion, so it was a little bit of an obligation to go. I don't think you'd catch me on another cruise. It was just a little bit of an overwhelming experience for me. Don't get me wrong, it was absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful for the experience. The views were incredible. Like once we got up to Alaska, the sun didn't set until around 11:30 p.m. And to watch that happen from a cruise ship is an incredible experience. However, I was just a little overstimulated. Some of you probably know this about me by now, but I am a total hermit. I live way deep in the forest on purpose because I'm just really sensitive, and I don't, it's like I can go to a big event of sorts and hang out for like a half an hour to an hour, and then I've got to go hide in my little hermit shell, which is something we're going to be talking about today, the hermit crab. We're going to be talking about the new moon we've got coming up here in the sign of Cancer. This is taking place on Friday, July 5th. The new moon peaks at 3:57 p.m. Pacific time, 14 degrees Cancer, and it's really interesting. Some people who know me well, my moon and my Mars are very strongly conjunct in the sign of Cancer. And so I'm quite cancerian, and that's a total Cancer thing, is to be a hermit. Not all Cancers are going to be like that, certainly not. But I will go into that in this recording. What I'm going to focus on in this recording is how to work with this energy. Of course, anytime we have a new moon, it's a time to set our intentions for new beginnings that are related to that zodiac sign. And this is such a lovely energy. This is really like my jam, my sister sign. I absolutely love the sign of Cancer, especially because I've got all this Cancerian energy in my chart. But I'm also going to be pulling up the chart and showing you some other really, really interesting astrological forces we are receiving at the time of this new moon. And really, Saturn's doing something really interesting over these next 4 weeks. Saturn is in fact, today, as I'm making this recording, Saturn goes retrograde, and it's going to be in the degree of the zodiac for basically all the way until the end of July. So that's a really, really interesting transit. I'll put some emphasis on that. I will also be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Cancer, because these parts of our body become more sensitive, especially when we're having this kind of a transit. I was going to say when anything transits to the sign of Cancer, but for this transit, we've got a lot. We've got Sun, Moon, and Venus all in the sign of Cancer. So it's a really good idea to pay a little extra attention to these parts of our bodies during this kind of transit, especially if you've got some strong planets in the sign of Cancer. I will also be talking about gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Cancer. As many of you know, what I like to do anytime we have a new moon or a full moon, I pull out my journal, new moon specifically, I write down the growth I want to experience that's related to that zodiac sign. And of course, I apply it to my own natal chart. If you're somewhat familiar with your natal chart, if you've had a reading with me, you can go back and review the video recording to see which area of your life this sign of Cancer manifests through. Also, do you have anything in the sign of Cancer? If so, this might be a very, very powerful transit for you. But anyway, I write in my journal, and then I like to take a few gemstones that resonate well with that zodiac sign or just the overall astrological forces we're receiving, put them on top of my journal, and just kind of leave it there for until my heart desires. Sometimes I'll move it the next day. Sometimes it'll sit there for a couple weeks. So that's how I like to work with this energy. And so I will expand on all of this throughout this recording. And I apologize if I sound a little funny. Of course, when we got home from the cruise, every single person in my family, except for my brother, somehow he escaped this one, but every single one of us came down with some sort of a congestion thing. Some people got a little worse than others, but it seems to be taking a little while to go away for myself. All right, so let's get into this. So first of all, the sign of Cancer. This is what we call the cardinal water sign. Now, when I say cardinal, what I'm talking about is force. Okay, all the cardinal signs, Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra, they all come when we enter into a new season. Okay, the sign of Cancer, when the sun moves into the sign of Cancer, that's summer solstice. That means it's summertime. Okay, so that's the force that projects us into a new season. Like Aries is springtime, Capricorn is winter, Libra is fall. Okay. But in the element of water, this is all about emotions and feelings and sensitivities and intuition. The sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is, clearly one of my favorite things to talk about in astrology. I do have very, very, very strong, how do I explain this? The most simple way to describe this is that I'm very sensitive to the moon, and as you know, in a lot of Cancer risings or Cancer sun, Cancer moons, a lot of us are, well, everyone really is sensitive to the moon. Everybody is, but some people more so than others. And the sign of Cancer really is the sign that's ruled by the moon. As we talk about the moon up in the sky, she influences our emotions and our moods and our intuition and our level of receptivity. In fact, whatever zodiac sign the moon was beaming through when you were born will say a lot about how you process your emotions and your level of receptivity and so on and so forth. While this sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon, the motto for the sign of Cancer is I feel. Okay, it's a very naturally empathetic energy. I mean, honestly, to the point of it can kind of be overly sensitive. Certainly not everybody who's a Cancer or Cancer rising or Cancer moon is going to be overly sensitive, but a lot of them are, especially if you've got a lot of other water placements in your chart, or maybe you don't have any earth in your chart. The sign of Cancer, it's like, okay, it's represented by the crab. Okay, the crab that wears this very hard shell, because it has to protect the soft, sensitive insides. Okay, the sign of Cancer tends to be very, very sensitive on the inside, and they have to wear this hard protective shell. It's a very strong energy. If you think about it, the sign of Leo is ruled by the sun. That sun is the brightest light in the sky. The sign of Leo is all about courage, and it's ferocious, but it's also playful. Well, the second brightest light in the sky is the moon. And so the sign of Cancer, while it's very, very sensitive, it's also really strong. I've seen some incredible athletes that are born under the sign of Cancer. I think a lot of that has to do with that cardinal force. But again, also being ruled by Luna, the second brightest light in the sky. And this crab, okay, the crab that sometimes when there's something scary going on, a lot of times when people have, especially if you've got like a sun in Cancer and it's kind of challenged in some way, meaning it's making a challenging aspect to Saturn or something like that, these people will have to, like, if something scary is going on, they scurry away. They kind of need to go into their own little place to retreat from the scariness, but also can be very, very protective, just like that hard protective shell. In fact, most crabs, this is like the cutest thing ever. I've seen so many videos about this where crabs will protect another crab. It's just the cutest thing ever. If one crab is getting picked on, another crab will come over and protect that crab. This sign could be extremely protective. In fact, with my moon, and by the way, not everybody wants to share their natal chart. And I just kind of, I don't know, I hope I don't regret it someday, but I like to share my natal chart placements with you guys, because honestly, you share them with me. I'm giving you readings. I'm seeing your whole chart. I'm seeing, so much about you. And so I feel like it's kind of fair that you guys get to hear these things about me. But so my moon, when I was born, the moon was right next to Mars, which Mars is aggressive. Okay, so we've got kind of aggressive protectiveness that comes from me. If somebody is, I always vote for the underdog, not only that, but if somebody's getting picked on, I will always stand up for them, even though I'm super sensitive, that this like aggressive protective energy comes out, especially if it's somebody that, is in my family that's, getting picked on or something like that. A lot of people who know me know how incredibly protective I can be. And that's very much that sign of Cancer. They can also be very, very nurturing. Okay. Again, being ruled by the moon. The moon is really kind of like the mother of the heavens. The sign of Cancer could be very, very motherly. A lot of cancerian children, which I happen to know a few of these, where they, say mom's sick or something like that. The Cancer child will be like, oh, okay, I'm going to help take care of mom, that sort of thing. Or I'll do the dishes tonight, that sort of thing, because it's, again, a little bit of a motherly energy. It is a feminine energy, but again, I've seen some very strong masculine men that fall under their sun is in the sign of Cancer, because it's strong, but it's also very sensitive. Okay, so let's see. Cardinal water is represented by the crab. The motto is I feel. Okay, this sign is all about feelings. It's so important that these people who have a lot of cancerian energy in their chart, that they keep themselves safe and protected. Like you wouldn't want to go and hang out with a bunch of toxic people if you've got these sensitivities, because you take them on as a Cancer. Again, it's like you're feeling your own emotions, but you're also feeling the emotions of others. That can also happen with the sign of Pisces as well. Really can happen with a few other signs as well. But sign of Cancer is just happens to be very, very unintentionally empathetic. Okay. And I don't mean to say that they can't be intentionally empathetic, but it's just in their nature to have, a concern for other people. In fact, this sign also has a lot to do with worrying. That's another, I've told you guys this in so many videos before. I don't really deal with anxiety or nervousness. Of course, maybe a few times in my life, but I worry about literally everything. It's like constant worry at best. Of course, I can get over it as a Sagittarius rising, but for the most part, I worry about everything. It's a very strong Cancerian trait. So again, we're talking about forceful water, cardinal water, talking about the crab that's protected, but also very sensitive. The motto is I feel. What else do I want to say about this sign of Cancer? Ruled by the moon. I guess that's, well, how do you want to grow in these ways? How do you want to grow in these ways? You want to become a little bit more intuitive. You want to become maybe, and not only that, but this is also a really good time if you say you have a lot of Cancer energy in your chart, or your sun is in Cancer, and you might be very, very emotional. And this is a really, some people, it's so interesting to understand astrology and understand people's natal charts and see why some people, some sort of I don't know, for myself, if I'm scrolling through Instagram and, somebody's saving a dog or something like that, I'm just instant tears just pouring down my face. And that's a very Cancerian trait. It's also a very Piscean trait. Regardless, for some people who have this much like sensitive energy in their chart, and then some people who just don't have, any of that. That's just in their nature to be like, why the heck is this person crying over this thing? And the sign of Cancer, this could be a really good time to learn how to work through healthy emotions, how to process emotions in a healthy way. Say something really, really emotionally traumatic happens. This would be a really good time to set the intentions on how to work through that in a healthy way, especially since Venus is in the sign of Cancer as well. And approximately 6 months from now, we'll have the full moon in the sign of Cancer. That would be the peak of this growth cycle. Okay, so let's pull up the chart and start going through some of these placements. So for those of you who are new to my recordings, I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, what we're looking at here is basically a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. Now, for those of you who are really new to this, let's just kind of buzz through this stuff. These things right here, all these little symbols right here, these are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies. Like here's the moon right here, here's the sun, here's Venus, here's Mercury. And when you go in the wheel a little ways, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs. All these things will be beaming through onto Earth. Again, I work with geocentric, we put Earth right here in the middle, beaming onto Earth at the time of this new moon. Okay, so let's start with the sun and the moon. This right here is a symbol for the sun, and this right here is a symbol for the moon. The moon's really easy because it just looks like a crescent moon. The sun, the symbol for the sun in astrology is always going to be that circle with a dot in the middle. Okay, now, anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the exact same spot. So the moon, again, is the mother, the sun is the father. Every single month, they come together, they meet in the same degree, in the same sign of the zodiac. They're sharing their energies back and forth, and they're creating this energetic baby, the baby that grows over the next 6 months. Again, until we have the full moon in the sign of Cancer. That's when the sun and the moon will be at opposite sides of the zodiac. Okay, this right here is a symbol for the sign of Cancer, the glyph for the sign of Cancer. And if you look, I know it might be kind of hard if you're on a phone to see these things, but here's a slightly larger version of that symbol for the sign of Cancer. It's really like the energy is so like feminine or centripetal that it's going inward. Because again, it's that very naturally sensitive energy. They're almost like they're going in on each other. Okay, the symbol for the glyph for the sign of Cancer. Now, at 14 degrees Cancer, this puts us in something called the second decan of this Cancerian energy, which actually gives a little twist of the sign of Scorpio as well, which can make it a little bit intense. Now, if you take the time to look this stuff up in your location, if you live in a totally different place, so I live in California, if you live, say, over in the East Coast or the UK or something, the sun and the moon, all these things will be in the same zodiac sign and the same degree as what we're looking at here, but they could be the entire zodiac will turn based on your location. Like I said, if you're from the UK or something, I think the sun and the moon will be somewhere down here. Okay, now, so if you do live somewhere fairly near Santa Cruz, California, you might notice that the sign of Scorpio will be on the horizon. I was noticing that this right here is basically represent the horizon. This right here is a symbol for the sign of Scorpio. So this is really neat. Scorpio is also a water sign, fixed water sign. And so I like the fact that we've got water on the horizon and we've got water coming from the sun and the moon. Okay, now this right here is Venus coming through that sign of Cancer. Okay, now from my understanding, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but from what I have heard is that in traditional Jyotish astrology, Venus might have been considered exalted in the sign of Cancer, which I understand. But really, Venus exalts in the sign of Pisces, which totally makes sense to me. But Venus works, when I say exalts, that means the planet or the celestial body is working with its greatest strength in that particular zodiac sign. And when we think about Venus, most people know Venus is the planet of love. Venus influences love and beauty and harmony and relationships and what we're attracted to, things that are aesthetically pleasing, poetry, lovely music. That's very Venusian. That's Venus's energy. And when we think about this very sensitive, sweet sign of Cancer, of course, Venus is going to work beautifully there. So she may not be technically considered exalted. To some ancient astrologers, she might have been considered exalted here, but regardless, she just works lovely. This is a really nice transit. So if you've got something, let's say, because I would assume some of you guys are Cancers out there, if you're watching this video, look to see what degree your sun is in, or whatever planet. Say you've got Mercury in Cancer or Jupiter in Cancer. If you got Jupiter in Cancer, you're stoked. That's where Jupiter exalts. But regardless, look to see what degree your Cancerian placements are at. Because if it's near 22 degrees Cancer, then Venus is sitting on that thing and bringing in love and beauty and harmony, unless she's, somehow incredibly challenged in your chart or something. But for the most part, this is really, really a nice placement. Okay, so let's move on to talk about Mercury. All right, so I'm trying to decide if I want to tell you guys a story or not. I think I'm going to, and I apologize. By the way, if sometimes these videos get a little bit long, you can always put it on the speed, the change the settings on YouTube to make me go in chipmunk mode and talk really fast, so you're not sitting here watching me for an hour. But Mercury, at the time of this new moon, is in the sign of Leo. But when I was getting off of this cruise, Mercury was still in the sign of Cancer. We had a lot of Cancerian energy going on. We had Venus in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer. Now, for myself, the sign of Cancer comes through the 8th house, which the 8th house represents a lot of things, but it's really kind of considered like the house of death. And I kid you not, even though the sign of Cancer, I love summer, love summer. So hands down, I seriously, as soon as summer's over, I'm practically in tears, just waiting for it to come back around every year. However, the sign of Cancer hits a harsh place in my chart. And I've got my moon and Mars in Cancer. And seriously, for like the past 5 years, my really good friends know this. For the past 5 years, every time it's Cancer season, I've either, like, one of my cats have had it. When my mom passed away, it's been 5 years since my mom passed away. I took on her cats. My mom had 4 cats, and I took on all these cats, and they were all old cats. And it was their time to go, but it was always Cancer season, always when the sun's hitting, or just overall planets are hitting my 8th house, my house of death. Well, this time, my goodness. All right. So I've got a dog. I'm not trying to sum this up as quickly as possible. I've got a dog who is literally like my baby. I've had him for 17 years. I adopted him when he was estimated to be about 2 years old. So he's about 19 now. And he looks great. He's been very well taken care of. He's just a little guy. He's just a little tiny. He's not super tiny. He's like you in a healthy state. He's about 14 pounds. Well, but he's old, and this is part of the reason I really was not excited about going on this cruise, because I've never left my dog that long, ever. Most of the time I've ever left my dog behind was for 6 days, and he stayed with my father and my stepmother, which they, anywho, I was really nervous about leaving my dog, even though we had really good pet sitters here, some really sweet young gentlemen. But I knew my dog, he's got a little bit of dementia going on. I knew he'd have a very, very difficult time without me being here. And about a half an hour after I got home, but when I first got home, I could tell he was like kind of confused. He looked dehydrated, not the pet sitter's fault at all. I just know that it was because I was gone. He was dehydrated. He just didn't look well, but he was okay. And only that, he was kind of bouncing around. He was excited to see. And about a half an hour after I got home, I went to give him a treat. Same kind, they're specific to senior dogs, these treats. They've got all kinds of good nutrients in there for senior dogs, and the same kind of treats he always gets. Well, I went to go give him one, and he started choking him. And I've seen him kind of choke before, but he's always calmed it out himself. Well, this became a very, very serious situation. And my partner was here, and I mean, I lost it. I completely lost it. Talk about emotions. I just fell to the floor screaming. Because my poor little dog, Nico, once he really started choking on this thing, he went completely limp. Completely limp. His tongue was hanging out of his mouth, his eyes rolled back into his head. And I couldn't even handle my emotions. It was the craziest experience for me. My partner was able to stay a lot more calm and was able to get the treat out of his throat, but he was still like unconscious. And we both thought he was dead. Thought my dog was dead. I can't believe I'm able to get through the story without crying, because I can feel it. I can feel the tears coming, but I'm like, no, don't happen. But I'm just holding him, just please come back, please come back, please come back. And literally we jumped in the car, and keep in mind, we are both exhausted coming home from this, cruise and kind of partying for a week and a half with the family and that sort of thing. We were just so exhausted, but adrenaline's pumping. We get in the car. My partner drove about 80 miles an hour to get to the closest vet. We got there. They were packed, but they let us in like immediately. And I could tell I think the reason he choked on this thing is because he was so dehydrated. But long story short, the vet was able to revive Nico, and it was the most, I lose my words trying to talk about it, because it was so crazy emotional for me. And it was Mercury and Venus and the sun, depending on what house this is. The sun's entering into my eighth house. My house of death was just lit up, but this is also the house of rebirth. And I will let you know, it's been about a week now, and Nico is doing much, much better. Of course, I really still have to keep an eye on him, but he's doing much better. I thought about bringing him up here, but he's fast asleep right now. I mean, it's too comfortable for me to wake him up. But that was a really, really traumatic experience for myself. Speaking of the sign of Cancer landing in my 8th house, that's going to happen if you're using the whole sign house system and you're a Sagittarius rising. That sign of Cancer is going to come through your 8th house. 8th house is one to be keeping an eye on for yourself, no matter what zodiac signs come in through there. So with all that said, I'm really glad that Mercury, because Mercury's mental function, my brain was like, it just completely shut down. So Mercury, hallelujah, I'm so glad Mercury is out of my 8th house and is now in the sign of Leo. So Mercury, I love Mercury in Leo. I like Mercury in a lot of signs. Mercury, okay, rules over our mental function, rules our nervous system, rules over our communication skills. Mercury is a very, very busy character. And the sign of Leo is this grand energy. It's like the leader of the zodiac. It's filled with courage. If you've got anything in your natal chart near 5 degrees Leo, Mercury's going, hey, let's lighten things up around here. Let's do some, activities of sorts. It can be a very, very creative energy coming through with Mercury and Leo. Leo is a very creative energy. It's ruled by the sun. Okay. Now, so this, I really enjoy. A lot of people who have their Mercury in Leo will just speak so bravely about anything. They're not afraid to say what they want, especially the generation that was born with Pluto in Leo. I notice a lot of that generation when you've got Pluto in Leo and it's fairly close to Mercury. You guys aren't afraid to say anything. It's quite empowering. Okay, so there's that. I hope you guys are able to follow along here. I think I'm feeling a little bit chatty since I haven't made a video in a while. All right, so there's Mercury in Leo. Now let's move on to, I want to talk about Saturn. So here's Saturn coming through the sign of Pisces. Now, Saturn's been going through Pisces since March of 2023 and will be there till the end of February of 2026. And Saturn is very rigid and cold. Saturn is the one who makes the rules. Saturn teaches us really hard lessons. Saturn is not a fun character at all, but he does teach us. If Saturn's kind of like the one of the great teachers, but the lessons are usually kind of tough. They usually come with a little bag of tears, especially coming through the sign of Pisces. Pisces is a very, very sensitive, emotional energy, just like the sign of Cancer. Cancer and Pisces, those are the two most emotional signs of the zodiac. Okay, now, the placement overall, Saturn going through Pisces, can definitely show us the sorrows of the world, especially if this is hitting something in your chart, but it's also really, really great for Saturn. Again, he wants things to be all structured and take everything very seriously. And Pisces is the mystic of the zodiac. Pisces is the most psychic sign of the zodiac. It's the sign that's it's like the sign that's most connected to other realms and that sort of thing. Other signs can be as well, but Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, it's the sign that's kind of most strongly associated with things like metaphysics and spirituality and that sort of thing. Now, what's going on with this new moon? Okay, so here's the sun and the moon at 14 degrees Cancer, and here's Saturn at 19 degrees Pisces. Pisces and Cancer are both water signs. 14 and 19 are pretty close in, what, 5 degrees away from each other. What's going to happen here is honestly even just a few hours, I think it's like 3 hours after this new moon, the moon will be making an exact trine to Saturn. It'll be about 4 days after this new moon. The sun is making an exact trine to Saturn. When I say trine, what I'm talking about are these blue lines that go from here to here. They are approximately 120-degree angle, and they're harmony. It's a good aspect. Okay, it means that this new moon is harmonizing with Saturn. Okay, now this can be really, really good, but it's almost like enhancing the potential that comes with this new moon, setting the intentions for the new Cancerian beginnings. Can even give it a little bit of a Piscean twist, a little spiritual twist, that sort of thing. So I actually really, really like that aspect a lot. Now let's also just talk about what Saturn's doing. So Saturn just went into retrograde, okay, and is actually going to be in retrograde all the way till November. Saturn is currently at 19 degrees Pisces, and I think he's going all the way back to like 12 degrees Pisces or something like that. But what's so interesting is that Saturn's going to be at 19 degrees Pisces, basically all the way until the end of July. This is like 4 weeks. Saturn is just stuck at 19 degrees Pisces, but technically in retrograde, just going really slow. Now, if you've got something in your chart near 19 degrees Pisces, or really even near 19 degrees Virgo, which would be opposing it, or 19 degrees Cancer or Scorpio would be trining it, or even 19 degrees, let's see here, Gemini or Sagittarius would be squaring it. That Saturn, that stuck retrograde Saturn might be trying to teach you some kind of pretty harsh lesson, okay? Something might be going on for you that's a little bit intense, especially if you've got something near 19 degrees Pisces. Some of you might even be feeling some kind of depression, but you're meant to, if this is what's causing it, I mean, really, in my opinion, any kind of depression, it's an opportunity to learn something from and rise above it. Okay, but this kind of transit, it will pass, but just be very, it could be such a good spiritual path for some people, or opening up new spiritual doors, or becoming more serious about your spiritual practices, that sort of thing. So pay very close attention to that, especially because this right here is Neptune, who's going through Pisces, 29 degrees and 56 minutes. I mean, holy smokes, that is an anoretic Neptune right there in retrograde. All right, Neptune rules Pisces. Okay, Neptune is what makes Pisces that mystical spiritual energy. Okay, now Neptune is, this is so interesting too. Neptune is a Poseidon in Greek mythology, the god of the sea. Okay, and Neptune's like literally right on my own natal sun right now. And that's what was so interesting about going on this cruise. I never would have gone on a cruise. I would never choose that for my vacation, but Neptune, the god of the sea, is right on top of my natal sun. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going on a cruise now. But Neptune is working so powerfully at the very, I think there's 4 minutes before the end of Pisces season here, but Neptune's in retrograde. I apologize if this is too much information for some people to be able to process. Just follow along as best as you can. Just know that when something is at 29 degrees, it's actually almost can be kind of a dangerous energy that can come through, but it can also just be super, super powerful. And really, when those slower moving celestial bodies, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, when they're in retrograde, they're really strong. Okay, this is very, very, basically to sum this up for you, this is really, really deeply spiritual energy. Could be enhancing people's intuitions, like wow. Okay, especially with all this Cancer energy going on and Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces. Really, really powerful stuff. So all those things that I just said about Saturn teaching us some harsh lessons right now, it's a very, very strong spiritual journey. That's for sure. Again, look at your chart and look to see if you've got anything near 19 degrees Pisces or 29 degrees Pisces, or again, those other signs. Really, if I'm being totally honest, if you've got anything in your chart that's at 19 degrees in any zodiac sign, maybe not so much Aries or Aquarius, and maybe not so much Leo or Libra. But even still, even because that would be, it would be either a semi-sextile or a quincunx, regardless. Just as a good generalization here, if you've got something in your chart that's at 19 degrees in pretty much any of the zodiac signs, there's something going on. Saturn's trying to teach you a big lesson right now. Okay, enough of that. Where should we go on to next? Let's talk about Mars, because Mars is making this almost exact sextile to Saturn. This is another thing. Okay, so Mars, aggressive. Okay, Mars is the planet of war. I love Mars. Mars is what makes us go take action on things. Mars rules things. Oh, that's another thing too. Mars rules dogs. And again, my moon and Mars are conjunct in the 8th house. For some people who are not going to understand this at all, but some of you will. Mars rules dogs, and my Mars in Cancer was lit up for this in the house of death for this experience with my dog. Regardless, when we think about dogs, of course, not all dogs are going to be. My dog isn't aggressive, unless he feels like he needs to be. But they'll, it's like kind of a dog thing to, growl and show their teeth and that sort of thing. It's very Martian or Mars energy. Mars rules engines. Mars rules our muscles. Mars rules our adrenal glands. Okay. Mars, that's Mars's energy. Boom, let's go. He wants to go. He wants to go fast and he wants to be furious. Now, in the sign of Taurus, Taurus wants to go slow and steady and keep things calm and patient. Okay, so I think, in my opinion, Mars probably gets a little frustrated going to the sign of Taurus, but people who are born with Mars and Taurus, a lot of times like they'll walk kind of slower, even though they don't even realize it or they don't know it or they're not trying to. They just walk kind of slower, that sort of thing, because the thing that makes them take action is in a slow, steady zodiac sign. Okay, but overall, this is kind of nice. Could be a little bit, there's another 19 degree. In fact, yeah, totally. If you've got something at 19 degrees in any zodiac sign in your natal chart, then it's getting activated, okay? Because Mars also being at 19 degrees. But we've got this green line that goes from here to here. This is a sextile aspect, approximately a 60-degree angle. In fact, that's pretty much exactly a 60-degree angle right there, because they're both at 19 degrees. Saturn, cold, rigid, astringent. Mars, hot, aggressive, almost rageful, okay? But they're the two malefics, meaning they could be troublemakers, Saturn and Mars. But that opportunistic, that sextile conversation that's going on between Mars and Saturn, these guys are actually trying to create some kinds of opportunities for people, okay? And it could be good for concentration, could be good for strength, could be good for discipline, could be good for something that it has to be done. It has to be something. I'm thinking about a particular couple of friends who are going through something a little turbulent right now. This kind of aspect, they're going through something that requires a lot of work and a lot of emotions involved and that sort of thing. But this kind of combination of energy that's flowing between Saturn and Mars, be like, we just got to get the job done. We have to just do this. We have to do it, and it's going to be hard. We have the energy, the opportunity for energy to push us through this, and let's do it patiently. Let's do it calmly. Okay, that can happen with this kind of aspect, especially if it's hitting something in your chart. But then we've also got Uranus here going through the sign of Taurus as well. Man, Taurus is just really getting hit hard here because, well, again, Taurus likes to be calm and cool and steady. Uranus is abrupt and zappy and revolutionary. Uranus wants a change immediately. I mean, Uranus has been going through Taurus since 2018. We'll be there for about, I think, another year and a half or so. But this is a debilitated placement because Taurus doesn't want to be zapped or going through this revolutionary change. And we've talked about this a lot. This does have, the sign of Taurus has a lot to do with money. We're seeing a lot of wild things going on with finances. But so I didn't look at the exact date, but sometime in July, Mars, in fact, it's probably just in a couple weeks, Mars will catch up to Uranus and we'll have this exact conjunction. Ooh, that's kind of a spooky one. If you got something near 25 degrees Taurus, look out. Because, okay, Taurus is like the earth of the earth signs. It's basically the sign that really does rule the earth. There's other signs, of course, that are they're earth signs. But Taurus is the slowest, steadiest, most patient, calm energy. And it's the sign that it's fixed. Okay, it's fixed earth. It's very, very strongly directly associated with earth. And here, this could be potential for earthquakes. This could be abrupt. This could be, talking about kind of even just through the month of July, this could be, whoa, like lightning storms, aggressive things going on. So be very, very mindful, especially if you've got something near 25 degrees Taurus in your natal chart, especially your sun or your moon, my goodness. Okay, next let's talk about Jupiter going through Gemini. All right, so Jupiter going through Gemini, it's going to be there till June of 2025, June of next year. I thought it was May, but I think it's actually June. Basically a little less than a year. Jupiter will be going through Gemini. Now, this is another debilitated placement. And the reason for that is, here's Jupiter. Jupiter technically rules this sign of Sagittarius over here. If you notice, these guys are opposite each other. So it's like the planet's in the opposite sign that it wants to be in. It's in the opposite sign of its home. And not only that, but Jupiter is like, when we think of somebody who's very philosophical, somebody who has traveled the world and see how other cultures live, and very almost even has a religious perspective, not necessarily any kind of particular organized religion or something like that, but more just spiritual, but mostly like philosophical, and looks at the big grand picture of things. That's very Jupiterian. Gemini is more about intellect and zones in on little facts. Gemini is the student. If you've got something near 9 degrees Gemini in your chart, woo, that's getting lit up. This could be a really good time for studying all kinds of things, studying things of any kind of nature, really, if you've got something near 9 degrees Gemini in your chart. And something that I'm appreciating about this transit is that, as I've talked about many times before, okay, so here's the south node, which is the drain point, okay, going through the sign of Libra. This is not my favorite transit at all. Maybe it's my own personal bias because I kind of have a lot of Libra energy in my chart, and that south node is draining those things out of my life, which is kind of a difficult thing to go through. But Libra is really like the sign of balance and harmony and charm. And in fact, my last name, Wage, actually, it means Libra. It means the scales. It's a sign that wants things to be fair. It wants justice. And we've got the drain point going through there on the year we're having an election. How cool is that, right? But the South Node is, here's this very, very strong trine that's going to Jupiter right now. And in fact, that trine's going to get even stronger. But they're harmonizing. Jupiter, the great benefic, okay, the bringer of wisdom and philosophy and luck and abundance, going through the sign of Gemini, very hyper intellectual, paying attention to all the little facts and that sort of thing, the student, they're harmonizing together. And then we've got that automatically is going to point me to the North Node, which the North Node, that's where energy comes in. Okay, South Node is where it goes out, North Node is where it comes in. And we've got this sextile aspect going from the great benefic Jupiter down to the North Node. Those sextile aspects, using this software, it's not going to look like this on astro.com or anything like that, but using time passages, the green lines are sextile. They basically mean opportunity. Little opportunities are coming through with this transit. It's kind of neat. But especially because these nodes have so much to do with our karma. So much to, I mean, everything has to do with our karma. But the nodes in particular, the North Node is like the direction we're going in, okay? As a collective, wherever zodiac sign the North Node is, it's like as a collective, we're taking on that energy. We're taking on the sign of Aries while the North Node goes through there until January of next year. And that South Node is draining Libra energy out. But Jupiter, the great benefic, is currently really getting along with those things that rule over basically the journey of our soul through this lifetime. Okay, Jupiter's getting along with these guys for this transit, and I like that. Especially because oh, come on, South Node, hurry up, get out of that sign Libra. I don't like it. Okay, now, let's see. Next let's talk about Chiron briefly. So Chiron going to the sign of Aries. So Chiron, the wounded healer, has so much to do with healing our wounds from early childhood development. And the sign of Aries is so strong. It's the warrior, okay? It's the sign of self. Especially if you've got a planet near 23 degrees Aries. Let's work on healing these things. Work on healing, the trauma. And I almost feel like the word trauma is getting overused these days. And it's just my own opinion, but I don't, for lack of better ways to explain this. If you've got something near 23 degrees Aries, or maybe even opposing that near 23 degrees Libra, maybe squaring it near 23 degrees Cancer or Capricorn, Chiron is like, hey, those things that are buried deep down within you, let's heal those things. So that's definitely a transit to be taking advantage of, especially because Chiron's making a square over to Venus right now. Venus is kind of soothing Chiron a little bit. Not only that, but these red lines, these squares make things happen. They do. Okay, now, lastly, let's touch on Pluto here. Pluto going through 1 degree Aquarius in retrograde. Really, really important transit here. So Pluto is the destroyer. Pluto destroys for the purpose of kind of rebuilding something that's more powerful than what was there before. Pluto is the bringer of very powerful transformational processes. Pluto is the bringer of death and rebirth. And Pluto works very, very powerfully at 1 degree. Basically, the major degrees to look at when you're studying astrology, 0 degrees, in so many minutes, 1 degree is really, really strong. Those 0 degrees and 1 degrees, those are both really, really strong degrees, but also that 29th degree. When any kind of a planet or celestial body is at either 0 or 1 degrees or 29 degrees, that planet is really working powerfully. And Pluto, being kind of referred to as a planet of power, is just so strong at 1 degrees Aquarius, especially in retrograde. Okay, this is really, really strong stuff. And something I'm going to point out, kind of dabbling into medical astrology right now, the sign of Aquarius rules not just the blood, there's other things that rule the blood, but the sign of Aquarius rules corrupt blood. Now, what do I mean by that? blood that maybe has some sort of, like if we've got some sort of a systemic infection, a lot of people are dealing with systemic candida, meaning you've got candida or some sort of a fungus or even virus that's going through your bloodstream. Okay, a lot of people are. I know it sounds really, really scary, but it's truly just very, very common. You know, maybe some sort of an injection or something that is corrupt in the blood. That is actually under the rulership of the sign of Aquarius. And with Pluto being so oppressive at this point, I think it's a really good idea that we take very, very good care of our blood. And I will, when I get into the gemstones, I'm going to bring up something that's extremely metaphysical and clearly cannot be proven, but I will say something about that. I think it's a really good idea that we all be very careful with our blood right now. Okay, so I covered everybody here. I think I did. I know that was probably a lot to process for some people, and I do apologize. Let's go on to body parts. So the sign of Cancer, like the main parts of the body that the sign of Cancer rules, is the breasts, and that's men and women. Okay, like just the chest area, basically. Also rules the elbows. Also rules the lower parts of the lungs. Also rules the stomach. Okay, and a lot of this has to do with, as I mentioned earlier, the sign of Cancer can deal with worrying a lot. Okay, and that really has a very strong effect on kind of the whole stomach, but the hormones in the stomach, cortisol, that sort of thing. A lot of people who fall into the sign of Cancer, if you got something else going on, let's say you're Cancer and you got Jupiter on your ascendant or something like that, will end up you know, expanding at the waist, having because they'll eat out of like worry, that sort of thing. The stomach is really something to be very, very mindful about if you've got a lot of Cancerian energy in your natal chart. Now, on that note, I'm not a doctor and I'm not offering any kind of medical advice whatsoever, but these particular herbs that I'm going to bring up here are some things that I learned from NORWAC, which is an astrology conference, one of the biggest astrology conferences really in the world, in 2022 from Judith Hill from her lecture. And because I've got all this Cancerian energy in my natal chart, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, taking all these notes and really writing this stuff down and experimented with these things. And for the stomach, a really simple one, it's called Angelica Archangelica, which is a beautiful flower. I would be very careful about going out and trying to harvest this yourself because there's some things that look like Archangelica that are poisonous. Queen Anne's lace looks a little bit similar to Archangelica, which the Queen Anne's lace is poisonous. But so if you could, you know, you can just buy this stuff from an herb shop or online or whatever. But Archangelica can be really, really nice for the stomach. Okay, I mean, really, there's so many other things we can do to take care of our stomach, but that's something that really, I did notice a difference dabbling into this herb for myself. Another one is that worrying, that, you know, oh, emotional worrying, that sort of thing. Chamomile, they sell chamomile tea just about any grocery store. Personally, I highly recommend sticking with organic. When it comes to teas, especially tea, because they're so sensitive. These plants, these herbs are so sensitive to the pesticides and the herbicides, that sort of thing. They really absorb that stuff. So I know not everybody is into just eating all organic food. I personally choose to, I like eat my food organically much more than something conventional, but tea specifically, I think it's really important that people, you know, if you're trying to take care of your body, stick with organic when it comes to tea. But yes, chamomile, they sell it all over the place. And not only that, but chamomile, well, it can make you a little sleepy. Not only that, it can also be very, very detoxifying. If you have a very sensitive stomach, sometimes it can, well, if you drink too much of it, if it was a really, really strong cup of chamomile tea, you might want to make sure that you've got access to a restroom. Because it can be extremely detoxifying. But I don't want to concern anybody. Like I said, you might want to check in with your healthcare practitioner, but just be gentle with yourself. But chamomile can be really, really good for the worrying and the emotions. Okay, lastly, what I'm going to bring up, my favorite one to talk about is red clover. And in fact, I harvested some last year. This is what red clover looks like. Okay, and I don't really notice that much of a strong flavor with red clover. And by the way, red clover grows all over the place, grows all over the United States, all over Canada. And it's literally like a weed. Most people just weed whack it down. You can probably find it growing in, you know, your local city park or whatever. You know, obviously want to maybe clean it really well if you're not out in the forest harvesting it. But red clover, in fact, last year I harvested so much of it that I actually made a tincture as well. You can see I made this May 22nd of 2023. So I think for this new moon in Cancer, I think I'm actually going to take the plant matter out and turn this into the real medicine right here. This is made with a really good, if you're somebody who likes to make tinctures, there's a company that's called, oh boy, I think it's called Oregon Organic Alcohol. It's in Medford, Oregon. And this is made with organic grapes. Extremely good alcohol for making tinctures with, my absolute favorite. But what the red clover does, this is so good for women out there who've got a lot of Cancer energy in their natal chart. It can be really good for cysts in the breast, which is a very common theme amongst, well, not just Sun in Cancer. We've got like your Venus in Cancer, Saturn in Cancer. Cysts in the breast can be a very common thing. Also, can be really good for the lymphatic system. Pisces technically rules the lymphatic system, but the sign of Cancer has an influence on it as well. And we would go back to Saturn going through the sign of Pisces. Okay, Saturn constricts, Saturn closes things up, Saturn makes things tight. A lot of people, especially if you've got something strong in the sign of Pisces or Cancer in your natal chart, you might be dealing with lymphatic issues right now. And that the red clover can be really, really good for that, amongst many other things. Be good for hormones. It's a little bit estrogenic, but again, personally, I'm not trying to offer any kind of medical advice, but I don't worry. It's such a small amount of being estrogenic that I don't worry about it. But I really, really like actually the combination of all of those herbs. Okay, so enough of that. Let's talk about gemstones. The dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Cancer is pearls. So I put on my super corny pearl ring today. This is nothing I would ever purchase for myself, but it was my Aunt Lily's. And Aunt Lily was actually just the most lovable sweetheart you could ever possibly imagine. But she really liked some gaudy jewelry. So these are real pearls. And pearls, going back to Pluto, going through this really, really powerful degree of Aquarius, and the whole thing with the blood, pearls are said to help. Again, this is very metaphysical and, might sound a little wacky, but pearls are said to help keep the blood clean and pure. Okay. But pearls are overall really said to just keep yourself pure. But if you think about the royal family, all the women of the royal family, okay, first of all, some of you may know what the heck I'm talking about. Some of you might have no idea what I'm talking about. But the royal family, the bloodline is very, very important. They want to keep their bloodline pure. If you ever notice, almost every single woman or female in the royal family often wears pearls. Okay, now again, so pearls are really said to help keep the blood clean. If you do buy a pearl, which there's, oh my goodness, you can buy beautiful pearls. You don't even have to buy like a whole necklace or ring or whatever, just one pearl. I really would make sure that you're getting it from a good company that is getting the pearls in a ethical and sustainable way, so they're not harming any animals. Okay, but there's some I know pearls are not necessarily the most popular thing to be jewelry to be wearing, but a pearl would be really nice, especially for Cancer risings. Cancer risings, that's a really good mineral for you to have around you. Okay, another one is Moonstone. Moonstone. In fact, a lot of people think that Moonstone is Cancer's dedicated zodiacal birthstone, but it really is pearls. Traditionally, it's pearls. I put on my Moonstone earrings today from my beautiful friend Marissa. I love you so much. Moonstone is great. It can increase emotions. If you're somebody who's like, oh my God, I'm just already way too emotional. Let's say there was a death in the family or something like that. I wouldn't recommend putting on Moonstone. However, if you're somebody, let's say you're setting the intentions to work through healthier emotions, okay, Moonstone actually can. It's like almost like learning to feel it rather than suppressing it or getting overwhelmed with it. Moonstone can be good for that. But again, if you're going through something that's already extremely emotionally turbulent, Moonstone might not be the best stone for you. Here's another piece of Moonstone right here. This is actually like real traditional Moonstone. There's something called Rainbow Moonstone. that I was reading somewhere, I saw a post on Instagram or something, where apparently rainbow moonstone is not technically moonstone. It's actually just white labradorite. Isn't that interesting? But generally speaking, you're going to find moonstone that looks like this, or you're going to find it white like this. You can also, a lot of times you'll find phony moonstone, so just be careful with that. Okay, another one. There's tons of them. You can always check in the description below here on YouTube, because I always leave a big list of stones that resonate well with the sign of Cancer. And they all kind of just give a different vibe. Rubies can also be great for the sign of Cancer. Technically, rubies are the sun's stone, and they are Leo's birthstone. But the sign of Leo falls in July, and so does basically the sign of Cancer is the first half of July. Leo's the second half of July, basically. Okay, but rubies, because they're Leo's stone and the sun's stone, they're vibrant. They lift up the energy. They make things more fun. They make things more playful. Rubies do. And so that can also be really good for a Cancer. There's also some really, really affordable stones that fall under the sign of Cancer. Howlite, which a lot of like fake red coral is actually howlite. They just dye it red to make it look like red coral. But howlite is actually a pretty powerful mineral to work with, and it's extremely affordable. That's why they make the, fake stuff, because you can buy the howlite for cheap and make it look like red coral and sell it for more expensive. But there's all kinds of stuff. Again, you can just look in that list below. Okay, so did I think I covered everything? I think I did cover everything. Thanks for listening, guys. I realize this was a little bit of a extended version here. Went off a little bit of a tangent because I missed my last recording. We will be having we'll have 2 full moons in Capricorn this year in 2024, which is interesting beyond, because it's kind of a Capricornian year with the elections and that sort of thing. But we will be having another full moon in the sign of Capricorn. I'll be putting a video out for that one soon. And if you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please do visit erinwageastrology.com. I love working with you guys. I love breaking down your natal charts. It's absolutely just my passion. So I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.